the first of two communities of practice in January. We are so happy to have you. I'm going to turn it over to Zami and Nevaeh. Nevaeh, you are muted, my sister. That's okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you come from. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming to our community of practice today, which will be celebrating transgender and non-binary communities through equity and representation. My name is Nevaeh Anderson, and I am an identity consultant with Denver Prevention Training Center, and my pronouns are she and hers, and I'll let my co-facilitator introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. My name is Zami Tinashe Hemingway. I am the CEBA Gender Affirming Project Manager with Denver Prevention Training Center. My pronouns are Zami, he, and him. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We would love to know who all is in the virtual room today. So if you could put your name, pronoun, organization, and the spirit of the winter season still, your favorite winter snack, in the chat box, that would be wonderful. Let's see. Awesome. So we have some folks coming in from Oregon, some folks from Arizona. Thank you all. And it looks like hot cocoa is some of our favorite winter holiday snacks. Baked cookies.
Soup.
Beautiful. Soup. Beautiful, beautiful. So we want to encourage you all to utilize the chat box for any questions, comments throughout today's session. The more we're able to engage with one another, the more we're able to learn and grow together.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Zami. Today, I would like to briefly go over the agenda with you all. We will review the purpose of today's session. So we're going to cover our learning objectives. We're going to discuss what gender justice is and how it's connected to celebrating the transgender and gender non-binary bodies, as well as lives. And we will have a brainstorming session and then discuss the upcoming community of practice and answer any questions that you all might have. This session is going to increase participants' knowledge of gender justice and its importance in supporting and celebrating transgender and non-binary individuals. Additionally, this session will allow participants to discuss the ways that they practice gender justice in their work with transgender individuals, as well as to identify opportunities for technical assistance. Our learning objectives today are going to be to define gender justice so that we're in alignment around language and understanding of what gender justice is, as well as to describe the importance of developing programming that celebrates the lives of transgender and non-binary clients. And I'm going to bring it back over to Zami.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So now that we have our learning objectives and understanding the purpose of today, I want to invite everyone to do an activity with us. So I'm going to ask you all 3 questions, and you can either take yourself off mute and answer or put your answer in the chat box. So the first question is, when you hear or read the phrase celebrating the body, what does that mean to you? So when you hear or read the phrase celebrating the body, what does that mean to you? Feel free to take yourself off mute or place your answer in the chat box.
I'd say that celebrating the body to me kind of just makes me want to be as holistic as possible about it. It's appreciating the way that the body moves, the fact that it is so strong, our hands, our legs, our bodies, and everything that we want our body to be, everything our body is perceived to be. everything that we are putting out there for it. The body is a physical thing, but it's also a mental thing. It's an emotional thing.
Beautiful. Thank you for that answer. We have quite a bit coming in through the chat also. So we see a lot of acceptance, body autonomy, physical, emotional, and spiritual recognition of our bodies, resilience, and beauty. Accepting a body however presented, whether it fits societal standards of that pronoun, of the person's pronouns or not. Let's see. Recognizing understanding / celebrating oneself.
Acceptance
Beautiful.
of the bodies, appreciating for everything it is, no shame, no guilt, no preconceived ideas. I love that one.
Awesome. These are beautiful. Keep them going. We're going to go to our next question, but keep, if you haven't put yours in the chat box, go ahead so we can have it there too. So our next question is, when you hear or read body empowerment, what comes up for you? So when you hear or read body empowerment, what comes up for you? So I see not judging our physical body. What else when we hear body empowerment? Owning who you are, self-pride, self-love, rights, strength, equity, individualized. Creation of spaces and policies that allow for bodies to exist in diverse expressions. I really like that. Thank you, Ms. Jai. Self-love, strength. Oh, a whole bunch just came through. Confidence, people accomplishing the bodies they want to live in, and equality, equity, diversity, and acceptance for all. Beautiful, beautiful. I love all these answers. Okay. Respect for the body of all human beings. Awesome. So we have one more question for you all. So the third one is, when you're feeling whole and safe in your body, what does that feel like for you? So when you're feeling whole and safe in your body, what does that feel like for you? Free, restful, freedom, empowering, peaceful, free, autonomous, loved. Lots of freedom, lots of free. Flow, energized, loved, comfort, peaceful, no pain. Thank you. Relaxed and comfortable, free and complete. Wonderful. Thank you all for those amazing responses. I think they're so important. A lot of someone just put decolonize. Ooh, that just touched me. A lot of your responses are so powerful, right? And often when we come together and we talk about issues pertaining to transgender and non-binary communities, a lot of the time it's during Transgender Day of Remembrance or TDOR, it's during Transgender Day of Visibility or TDOV, which both are very, very important and needed events. And beyond that, we want to show our transgender clients that they are seen, valued, and supported year long. So through celebrating and supporting clients and feeling more whole and safe in their bodies, organizations are able to deepen their allyship work with gender expansive communities through utilizing a gender justice framework that's based in empowerment and representation, which is part of the reason why we ask you these questions, right? So I'm going to turn it over to Nevaeh, who's going to talk more about what we mean when we say gender justice and how celebrating transgender bodies is doing that.
Thank you so much for that, Zami. Before I go ahead and go into the actual definition itself, I have a question to ask you all. So when you all hear or think of the words gender justice, what comes to mind for you? Mind you, you can feel free to either put it in the chat box or take yourself off of mute. Liberation.
Creating safe spaces for bodies to exist as they are.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Let's see.
There's like taking like real steps to promote equity among all different gender representations and like healthcare and income and all of that.
Absolutely, I definitely love that. And equity is definitely appearing, so that's a recurring theme. Thank you all for that. And this last one, Michaela J. Rodriguez becoming the first trans actress to win a Golden Globe for her role in Pose as Gender Justice. Absolutely, congratulations to her. These are wonderful definitions, and please feel free to keep adding on in the chat box as I go ahead and push forward for the respective time. So when we speak about gender justice, right, we are defining it as an intersectional approach that centers the diverse needs, experiences, and leaderships of those that are pushed furthest to the margins and that are most impacted by discrimination and oppression. Gender justice supports us in achieving both equity, which is equal access to resources and opportunities, as well as equality, which should be equal outcomes for all. We are going to go ahead and show a very short clip of Claire Farley. She's a senior advisor in the Office of Transgender Initiatives in San Francisco, California. And she was going to be discussing what gender justice or transgender liberation look like. I believe Misty, our producer, will be playing the video. So I hope you're just excited to see it as I am.
At least, I've learned so much just in the past 10 years around how do we think about trans and have the vocabulary to do so and really articulate it in a way that resonates for many other folks. And so when I think about trans rights and discrimination, I am hopeful that we don't have to do one-on-ones, that many of the things that we talk about are just part of our general vernacular and vocabulary. It's part of, trans education is integrated into our schools and education, medical education. And I think, the more it becomes a normal part of the more trans visibility and trans rights becomes a normal part of our being as a society and as a community, I think there is more a sense of really being able to have true intentional leadership and commitment and inclusion of folks in our society.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I would just add we did a visioning exercise similar to this with our trans advisory committee, and the question that the chairs raised was kind of, what does trans liberation look like? How do we win? How do we get there? And that also means racial equity and so many other pieces of freedom. But I think one place that I would love to be able to see is like actually where have the trends changed, like unemployment not being at 3 times the level, underlying health conditions and other issues that, is compounded and impacts our overall wellness. How has that changed? Are we healthier? Are we happier? Are we more connected to resources and family? So really looking at some of those social determinants of health, like where have those evolved, and really looking at the numbers to say, are we making, equal wage? And, if we look at past movements, those are the questions that we're asking today.
Awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome, thank you. It was a delay on my end. Okay. So that clip was a clip of Jenna Rapuez, who's the Director of Gender Health SF in San Francisco, as well as Claire Farley. And I think they did a great job giving examples of what happens when agencies engage in gender justice and work towards transgender and liberation or liberation for gender expansive communities. So what they shared was we're able to see equitable housing, equitable pay, access to health services such as HIV prevention, family planning, and treatment, and truly be a community that can thrive, right? So I love that conversation. So now that we have a working definition and an example of gender justice, we want to do 2 quick polls to learn more about the work you all are doing at your agencies. So the first poll asks, does your agency have transgender or non-binary specific programming? So yes, no, or I don't know. Okay, awesome. So it looks like most people are saying yes. We have some folks who are saying no, and then a couple of folks who aren't sure. Awesome. So those are the results. 70% yes, you do have transgender non-binary specific programming, 18% does not, and then 11% aren't sure. So our next question, so we could go to the next poll. Awesome. Thank you so much, Misty. So our next poll is, do you feel your agency's programming is rooted in gender justice? Yes, no, or I don't know. Awesome. So thinking about the definition we gave. Okay. So we have majority of our participants weighing in. So about 73% says yes, you do have programming that's rooted in gender justice, 14% no, and 14% I don't know. Cool, thank you, thank you. So I have a question to the community. So for folks who does have transgender or non-binary specific programming, we love to hear what type of programming your agency does and how you feel it fits into the definition of gender justice. So if you wanna bring yourself off mute or place it in the chat box, that would be great. I know about some folks programming already, so maybe I'll volunteer some folks, but I would love for you all to volunteer yourselves.
Hi, Zami. I'll start. This is Jericho.
Thanks, Jericho.
No problem. I was trying to write it all in the chat, but hi, everybody. My name is Jericho Glendo, coming from the Southwest Center in Phoenix. So we have a gender affirming program here, just in its starting stages. I'm the program manager, and we provide services not only to our kind of services that we have at the center, which is a clinic, HIV and STI testing, as well as behavioral health, nutrition services, and case management for those living with HIV. As far as the program specifically, we help with insurance navigation, again, referrals to like our clinic itself and outside resources, name and gender marker assistance, and overall support and empowerment, because a lot of the challenge can be self-starting and as well as accessing skills. You know, some folks just don't have the necessary life skills, and we try to empower them as much as possible. And I think that's where it kind of comes into the gender justice, is taking back our power is essential to our success. So that's what I aim to do with this program.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jericho. And Jericho's with Southwest Center for HIV and AIDS in Phoenix. Love some of the work that y'all are doing. Thank you. So Renee at HIV Alliance in Oregon says that we offer trans syringe exchange and HIV testing, trans and gender diverse counseling program, also partnership with local organization Transponder to provide suicide prevention and drop-in counseling services. Wonderful, thank you. Renee, what pieces of that would you say fits into gender justice? If you don't mind bringing yourself off mute if you can. Not sure if you have access to it.
Yes, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I think that the trans syringe exchange and the trans testing are really critical services. I think that they're really important to have specific access to those things, but I really think about the counseling program in terms of the gender justice, and we have some peers in that program who can work with folks. And I think in that way we can touch on more aspects of what folks need than in the specific, syringe exchange and testing. Those are really specific and concrete programs. And I think gender justice is a more holistic approach. And that's what I really like about the counseling services.
Awesome, thank you, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and pass it back to my co-facilitator, Nevaeh.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Zami. When we're providing services and programming for transgender and non-binary communities from a gender justice framework, right? That means that we are providing services that goes beyond Transgender Day of Remembrance as well as Transgender Day of Visibility. For example, access to equitable care and services that are free from stigma that also celebrates life. This can look like, for one, resources that empower transgender and gender non-binary individuals to have agency over their own sexual health. So this can look anything like birth control to general family planning, even how PrEP is referred and distributed. And this can also look like aging and celebrating trans elders, like in this gorgeous portrait series that celebrate older trans and gender non-conforming people by way of BuzzFeed. As you can see, these images are taken from that website. Back to you, Zami.
Awesome, thank you. And in addition to those, also having images and programming that shows faces and achievements of transgender and non-binary folks outside of trauma. So again, a lot of times when we're seeing the faces and names of trans folks, particularly trans folks of color, it's often during TDOR, and those are folks who have passed, right? But during what we often want to say is we want to give people their flowers when they are alive and with us in community, and uplifting trans folks. So showing images, showing pictures, having programming that focuses on how do people live in a holistic way. So that includes creating and developing healing and holistic wellness programs that teach transgender and non-binary communities how to care for their bodies and their spirits outside of just medical transition. And when having those conversations around medical transition, be very intentional around different aspects of it, asking trans folks, are you planning on having children, doing intentional family planning during that process as well? So I have another question to the community. Have you all seen other examples of gender justice in the transgender community? And if so, we would love to hear some of the other examples you all have seen, either through taking yourself off mute or adding it into the chat box. Thank you, Julia. So the images come from a photo shoot called Every Image is an Offering. So if you want to look that up, that's the URL for it. They're very, very beautiful.
Thanks for sharing, and the prior slide also. Those are great.
So anyone else have other examples of images that they've seen celebrating gender justice in the transgender community? No problem. If you do think of anything, feel free to place it in the chat. So we know that programming is very important, and so is having agency buy-in to that program. So as public health providers, it's important that our agencies, clinics, health departments, all promote gender justice in a holistic way through not only including it in programming, but in the mission, vision, and values of that organization, clinic, or health department. This creates a foundation for trans inclusivity, from policies and procedures to programming and even in our hiring practices. When we have the foundation based in inclusivity, that means that instead of us trying to figure out how do we include transgender and non-binary folks into the programming that we have, like our PrEP programming, our HIV prevention programming, our syringe access programming, instead of us trying to figure out how can we fit them into the programming from the very beginning will already be developed with transgender and non-binary folks in mind, so they're already going to be included. So next, as a community, we really want to do a brainstorming activity to explore some of the barriers that we might be having in developing holistic programming for transgender and non-binary folks, and also think about some of our solutions. So I'm gonna give it back over to Nevaeh, who's gonna lead us in this brainstorming activity.
Thank you so much for that, Zami. So we do have a few questions that will help us with the brainstorming process. I'm going to go ahead and ask these questions out loud, and Zami's going to go ahead and type them in the chat box. So the first question is, what are your agency's barriers when providing transgender specific programming? And I'll repeat that one more time out loud. What are your agency's barriers when providing transgender specific programming? Okay, so Jesus stated staff that have the knowledge to deliver those services. I definitely would agree. There's one from Nick. I hope I got your name right. Oh wow, all these are just coming in.
Nick says, I think hiring trans folks contributes to gender justice. It means a lot when a client sees QT-POC folks providing our care. It absolutely makes folks feel comfortable and seen, and reduce barriers for folks who have medical service trauma.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
I was, can you hear me? I'm sorry, I've got a little bit of a sore throat, but I think just to kind of piggyback off that, as a brown person, you know, when I like seek therapy or medical, or I want to see somebody who looks like me, you know, so that's kind of an issue too, is being able to hire and have somebody here that, well, we work with youth and families, so being able to have somebody here that the youth looks like, you know, and then also training staff to understand why that's important.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. Thank you so much for that. Hunter stated that it's difficult to find ways to connect with the trans communities, especially in areas where it's not safe for trans people to be visible. And that's actually a valid point as well. Funding and insurance barriers. And Jai, I hope I said your name right. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. She stated that our agency is housed with a larger for-profit hospital. So there's definitely a lot of pushbacks to changing anything structurally within the agency, as well as a lot of the barriers becoming the workers' barriers. So champions of gender justice in the clinic are the only ones who self-identify as transgender, and for the most part do not have the power to make managerial decisions. Definitely trans staff members have faced a negative response from physicians for correcting information with the provider. That's definitely that's definitely valid. So thank you so much for bringing that up, because that tends to be a recurring theme in medical settings. I'm going to let you all continue to, I'm also going to let you all continue on with the conversation as I ask the second question. The second question is going to be, what are the ways that your agency can be more celebratory in their transgender and non-binary programming and services? So this can include prevention, this can include gender affirming care, this can include sexual health, anything in that arena. Okay, so Renee stated training more clinical staff to offer gender affirming care as we expand. I love this one from Andrew, highlighting and funding trans services and not just during TDOR or Pride Month. So this could be listening and paying trans voices year round. I definitely like that.
I'm just going to highlight something that Jericho put for the previous question. So Jericho put staff unlearning training is helpful, but we often need to unlearn what we've been told about trans lives. Grant outcomes can be a barrier. State insurance does not cover gender affirming surgeries. So it looks like one of the ways that the agencies can be more celebratory is also, doing some additional education around unlearning and creating more grant funding opportunities. So which kind of goes into what Andrew was saying and some other folks were saying as well. So our own staff unlearning some information that we may have learned over time about trans lives.
Absolutely. Bev brought up a great point too, with marketing and images that show diverse images of trans and non-binary individuals thriving. I definitely feel like that's important, because if we're pushing out the narratives of trans and non-binary individuals living their best life, it can definitely change the narrative, and it can definitely narrate what gender justice should look like and what it can look like. Also, just throwing this out there, would data entry as well as paperwork be a form of gender justice as well? Or just how we could be more celebratory towards trans individuals?
Yes. We work a lot on how we say things, and we walk the talk. We don't just say we're gonna do stuff. We change a lot of our wording in our like the assessment, right? We call it something else. The client, we call a participant. So we started there with just what we say and how it sounds and why it's important.
Absolutely. Christina, can I ask you a probing question with that? Would this also include how you all recognize transgender and gender non-binary individuals through your data? And if so, can you briefly explain how you all go about that process?
So I think we're still a long way from that. We do have a data system that we use as an agency, but we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to it's called EMR or electronic medical records. So honest to just transparent, we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your honesty.
And Nevaeh, I'll read some of the comments in the chat for you.
Okay.
So Jai put training front desk staff and non-medical staff who may be supporting or interacting with trans patients, creating programs for trans patients through input from the local trans community, integrating HIV care and gender affirming care for our HIV clinics specifically. A lot of folks said yes to that comment. And then all staff to understand the importance of the smallest things that can impact trans and non-binary folks, less stock photos and messaging, to be active in the community all year round, T-Dor, T-Dove. Robert shared, while it's important to acknowledge trauma-informed model of care, it's also great to not only look at people through the lens of trauma or injury. And then Jericho added something we just started. We offered dope kits or DOP kits, syringe shuttles to new GA, gender affirming health clients. So GAHT clients.
I wanted to add something really quickly about the data question, which is that I found it really difficult to push for more gender affirming healthcare in the local area. I live in Phoenix, but I work in Tucson, and that's predominantly because surveillance of at the state level for HIV for our state doesn't do a good job of collecting gender identity. And so like from a top-down model, there's already a problem of being able to even show the need in order to secure the funding. And so I feel like that's also a place for us to make more gender affirming policies, is in the way that we're collecting the information at the state level and how we're doing surveillance, because that indicates a lot of times how we're going to be able to get funding in the local community.
Definitely. That seems to be a recurring theme, especially around data, where sometimes it's not like it's beyond your control. So thank you so much for expressing that or sharing that with us. Gender affirming hormone therapy, that's what GAP means. Okay, thank you so much for clarifying that, Terry. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and move into the last question. If there's anything else that popped up for you all, please feel free to put it in the chat box. The last one would be, what technical assistance do you think you might need to develop more programming, either in your STI HIV clinics or outreach efforts, etc., anything in that realm for gender expansive communities that would include a gender justice framework and that would also celebrate the lives and bodies of the community? And I will repeat the question one more time. So the last question is, what technical assistance do you feel like you might need to develop more programming in your STI/HIV clinics or outreach efforts, anything in that arena, for more gender expansive communities that include a gender justice framework and that celebrate trans and gender non-binary bodies and lives? So when you look at your agency now, do you feel like you have gender affirming spaces for gender diverse individuals, whether it's the safe space sticker or gender mutual bathrooms, anything of that nature?
We have a team of young people and some other professionals. We call them wellness coaches, not she's a therapist. And we're all trained in Safe Zone. We do safe zone trainings. We're able to schedule some for the Las Cruces Public Schools in the next month. So we're trying to do more outreach on Safe Zone.
Okay, thank you. That's actually really impressive work, so amazing.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
go
cool.
ahead.
Sorry, I'm muted on two different phones, so I keep getting confused. Some of the TA that I think would be helpful for us is some TA on how to help with that concern of like how to collect data, how to appropriately like evaluate that data, both for at our state level, but also at our organizational level for our Ryan White funded agencies would be super helpful. And then some admin and executive level, like one-on-one coaching around gender justice. I think that we have a lot of buy-in from our direct line staff, but it's not really interwoven into our strategic plans or our policies or procedures. And I feel like that's kind of like the next step, since we have folks who are doing the daily work that are on board. We need our admin and our managers and executive team to be on board as well.
Okay, absolutely.
And actually, it would have. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Please finish your thought.
My other thought is that what I've seen in Arizona is that a lot of times we have folks come in and provide technical assistance of what they've been able to replicate, or what they've been able to develop in like LA or San Francisco, and Tucson and Phoenix, and really Arizona in general doesn't. I feel like there's a lot of disconnect in terms of like how the metropolitan cities act in Arizona, because we act in a lot of ways more like the southern part of the United States. Mm-hmm. And so it would be helpful, I think, to experience or to hear some technical assistance that is geared more towards working within like hostile political climates and working with like sometimes hostile public health agencies as well.
Definitely. So do you feel like the political views often seep into the healthcare practices there in Arizona?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we're a very conservative state. Phoenix is much more conservative than Tucson, but I think to some extent, Tucson believes very much that we're like a blue area of a red state, but we're still beholden very much to the policies at the statewide level. So even though we're we might be a little bit more progressive in Tucson or feel like we're more on board with like engaging in policies around these ways, we're still, sometimes our hands are tied. So how do we like navigate that and still provide services to our trans siblings who are in the community so that they're not being left behind?
Absolutely. And I know that can seem like an uphill battle. So thank you for being here, and hopefully we can be able to, hopefully we can contribute to making things a little bit more equitable at your agency, let alone in Tucson. Let's see. Were there any other thoughts?
I have a question about, for folks who said that you don't have specific transgender or non-binary programming, what type of technical assistance might you need to maybe start that programming? And folks who might have that programming, what are types of technical assistance you may need to expand that programming? So do we do any specific program, family planning, or go ahead, Renee.
I was just going to say we do have some services, and our agency covers multiple counties, and some of them are very rural. And I was thinking of what one of my coworkers said earlier about reaching populations when they live in places where they don't feel safe. So I think, for us, some TA in terms of expanding our services would be around how do you do that in maybe rural settings where people don't always feel safe to, to come to a service that is specifically targeted that way,
Awesome, thank you, Renee. So similar to what Ms. Jai was saying around creating programming for folks who might live in more conservative areas or areas that might seem more hostile for trans and non-binary folks. So how to reach some folks who may be a little more isolated. Thank you. I see your hand, Robert.
Oh, hi there. Thank you. I'm in the world of providing technical assistance at the California Prevention Training Center. And so I have just a question for the group, which would be, what about the issue of language justice in the trans world, and wondering if people who provide services to trans and gender diverse individuals would like to have more trainings conducted in Spanish.
That's a great question. So folks, do you want to maybe put that in the chat, give a thumbs up if you are interested in diversifying language around training technical assistance? So we see some thumbs. Awesome. Yeah, so it sounds like quite a few folks would like some trainings in Spanish. Thumbs up, some yes in the chat. Great question. Thank you so much, Robert. So this part of our is really just to continue our conversation with any questions that you all might have. You know, I think that it's really great that we began this brainstorm. The brainstorming should not and hopefully will not stop here. But what are other questions that we as a community might have? So I see Renee put also TA on state or federal level advocacy that we can do to improve care and data collection broadly, not just at HIV specific orgs. I think that's a great idea on creating technical assistance around helping people really be able to read the political climate. I know that does help in Arizona. I live in Arizona, so that does help being able to figure out what type of programming we might be able to do and where some barriers in programming might happen. So what is the political climate in your area? How does that affect what funding might be coming down the pipeline? And then how do you intentionally go after funding to create intentional programming, right? I just wonder, for folks who do provide services, how many folks might have specific programming for family planning? So there are more trans and non-binary families who are going through the route of giving birth, wanting to be able to chest feed, wanting to be able to figure out adoption, hormone therapy, et cetera, if they are going down that route. And so how many folks include that in their sexual health education when working with trans and non-binary folks and when meeting with your trans and non-binary clients?
Hey, Zami, this is Andrew Miller. I work for Denver Health's LGBTQ Health Services Department, and this is something that we have started within the last year, kind of expanding what gender affirming care means. I think oftentimes the focus is just on hormone therapy or just on gender affirming surgeries, but I agree we've been lucky enough to work a lot with our midwife team on making sure that all aspects of healthcare, especially around family planning and what that can look like, are affirming. We know that so often trans and non-binary folks who are pregnant, the experience they have, not just while navigating pregnancy, but also giving birth, is incredibly traumatic with the levels of misnaming, mispronouncing, and misgendering that happens not just to the person giving birth, but also to partners. So we've been trying to expand that. And we're lucky at Denver Health to have a lot of buy-in on this, but I know as a trainer doing this nationwide, we've hit a lot of pushback on that. And so I'm lucky to work for an organization where we can do this, but it feels really hard to find that nationally.
Right. Thank you so much, Andrew. Does anyone have any additional questions or even topics that you might want to explore a little bit before in our last couple minutes together as a community? So I want to say thank you for you all being here today. This was an amazing session. Again, I hope that the conversation does not end here and your brainstorming does not end here. Our next session is going to be on the ballroom culture and transgender community and HIV prevention. It is scheduled for January 31st. So in 2 weeks from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We'll be sending out the save the date shortly. This is going to be an amazing time for folks who are not familiar with ballroom culture to come and hear a little bit about it, learn some terminology, get a brief history about how HIV prevention happened in the ballroom culture and really supported Black and Latinx communities, and the rich history of HIV prevention and advocacy and activism. And for everyone at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time today, we will also be sending out a survey for some feedback. Please complete the survey. We would love your feedback. We would love to know what you all enjoyed, as well as ways that we can make these sessions more supportive and helpful for you all as well. And last but certainly not least, we just were talking about different ways that you all can utilize technical assistance. So remember, we do offer free technical assistance. And if you are interested in that, please contact me, Zami, at zami.hemingway@dhha.org, or you can do a request through CTS. So thank you all again for your amazing participation and showing up today. And we hope to see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you all so much for attending, and until next time.